Did you know that in some international surveys, people in certain countries rate the United States very low in favorability, sometimes below 30%? At the same time, other places see it as a land of freedom and opportunity. These mixed views show that the world's feelings about the US can vary a lot. When someone says, "Why does the world hate the USA?" it's not a simple question to answer because people's opinions come from many different experiences and histories. In this video, we'll explore why some people across the globe have negative feelings toward America, looking at factors like its foreign policies, cultural influence, and military power. We'll also see that while some nations dislike the US, others admire it, which makes the entire topic more complex. Early reasons for distrust. To understand modern feelings about the United States, we have to look back at how the country rose to global power. After winning its independence from Britain in the late 18th century, the US spent the 19th century expanding its territory, gaining land from Native Americans, buying land like the Louisiana Purchase from France, and going to war with Mexico. By the early 20th century, the US was no longer a small group of colonies. It had a growing economy and was starting to show more power on the world stage. In 1898, the U.S. fought a short but important conflict called the Spanish-American War. America won and took control of places like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. This victory showed that the U.S. was ready to join the group of nations that had overseas colonies, similar to Britain and France. However, taking over new territories also brought resentment from people who felt the U.S. was acting just like the European empires. Many people in these territories believed they did not receive the same rights as American citizens. During the early 1900s, the U.S. sometimes sent troops to other countries in the Western Hemisphere, especially in Latin America, to protect its business interests or to shape local governments. People in countries like Nicaragua and Haiti felt these actions were heavy-handed, so resentment and suspicion toward the U.S. started to build. In other words, early negative views of America were tied to the sense that it was becoming too powerful and overstepping boundaries in places outside its borders. After World War II and the birth of a superpower, the period after World War II was a turning point. The United States came out of the war with a strong economy and major global influence. It helped rebuild Western Europe by sending billions of dollars through something called the Marshall Plan. People in those countries appreciated the financial help, but some also questioned if the U.S. was doing it to gain more power in European affairs. At the same time, the U.S. and the Soviet Union became rivals. This rivalry became known as the Cold War and divided the world into two major camps, one that supported the American-led side, capitalism and democracy, and one that supported the Soviet side, communism. During this time, the U.S. became involved in conflicts that it called proxy wars, which basically means indirect battles against the Soviet Union by picking sides in local wars. Places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan became major battlefields in this global tug-of-war. One of the most famous of these proxy wars was the Vietnam War. Although it started as a local conflict, the U.S. got heavily involved to stop the spread of communism. The war caused huge destruction in Vietnam and had a terrible effect on neighboring countries like Cambodia and Laos. American forces dropped vast amounts of bombs, used chemicals like Agent Orange, and caused the deaths of many civilians. In Vietnam and across the world, people held giant protests accusing the U.S. of causing unnecessary suffering. This war turned many global opinions against America, creating an image of the U.S. as a country too quick to use military force. The role of U.S. foreign policies and military power. When people ask, why does the world hate the USA? They often point to American foreign policy and how the U.S. uses its military. After Vietnam, other conflicts kept adding to the sense that the U.S. was a global police officer. For instance, in the 1990s, the U.S. led a coalition to push Iraq out of Kuwait in the Gulf War. Many supported that action, but for others it proved once again that America was willing to drop bombs in far-off places for its own interests. Then, after the attacks on September 11, 2001, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan to remove the Taliban and stop terrorist groups. A couple of years later, it went into Iraq claiming that there were weapons of mass destruction, which turned out not to exist. The war in Iraq caused chaos and high civilian casualties, and no such weapons were found. This made many people around the world believe that the US had acted without enough evidence, damaging its reputation. Even in countries that had once supported America, opinions dropped. People saw news reports of bombings, civilian deaths, and stories about American soldiers abusing prisoners in places like Abu Ghraib. All of these events added to the view that the US was acting without proper concern for the people in those regions. In other parts of the world, such as Pakistan and Yemen, the US used drone strikes to target terrorists, but sometimes innocent people were also killed. This led local communities to see America as insensitive to local lives and sovereignty. These conflicts and interventions, rightly or wrongly, built the view of America as a nation that uses its power to do what it wants, regardless of global opinions. Culture, media, and fast food. It's not just foreign policy that causes dislike. American culture itself can upset people who feel their own ways of life are overshadowed. The US is a leader in popular entertainment thanks to Hollywood movies, TV shows, and music. While many enjoy American pop culture, others feel it's a sign of cultural domination. They worry that American brands, celebrities, and fashions push aside local traditions. Think about fast food chains like McDonald's, KFC, and Starbucks. You can find them in cities around the world. Some people love this convenience, but others see it as a form of cultural takeover. They argue that when these American chains pop up everywhere, smaller local eateries lose out and local food culture becomes less visible. This tension can lead to anti-American feelings because people see their own culture fading under what they call Americanization. Hollywood movies also shape how the world sees America. They often show American heroes saving the day or show an exciting version of American life. For some viewers, this can be entertaining and positive, but for others, it looks like Americans are bragging or ignoring the realities of life in other countries. Some critics believe Hollywood sometimes stereotypes other cultures in harmful ways, making them look like villains or weak characters. This kind of portrayal can create anger or hurt, adding another layer to why some people end up hating or resenting the US. Economics, globalization, and American power, America's huge economy, is another factor. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Walmart have a global reach and influence how people shop, work, and interact. On one hand, these companies bring jobs and technology to many areas. But on the other hand, local businesses can't always compete, and some people see the US as a giant that benefits from globalization more than other countries. When these American companies move into foreign markets, critics say they create dependency on American goods and services. This can lower the chances for local entrepreneurs. For example, a small shop in a developing country might close because it can't match Walmart's prices. This leads to frustration and anger at American companies and, by extension, the US itself. America's strong ties to global finance also come with risks. The financial crisis of 2008 started in the American housing market, but ended up harming people around the world. When Americans make risky economic decisions and fail, other countries suffer too. This caused resentment and made some feel that the US is reckless with its power, and the rest of the world pays the price. Contradictions and criticisms about values. Another source of anger is what many see as hypocrisy in American politics. The US often speaks about democracy and human rights, but has supported dictators or authoritarian regimes in places like Chile under Pinochet and Saudi Arabia when it fits its strategic needs. People see a gap between America's speeches on freedom and its actual alliances, which can include governments that are not democratic or that commit human rights abuses. Some also point to issues like the detention center at Guantanamo Bay, where terror suspects were held for years without trial, or the use of torture in interrogation sites. These actions go against the American ideals of justice and liberty, so critics say the US does not always practice what it preaches. This adds to the perception that the US picks and chooses which countries or issues it cares about based on its own interests. At the same time, America's domestic problems, such as high levels of gun violence or racial tensions, are widely reported in global media. Critics ask, how can the US lecture us on human rights and social issues when it has so many problems at home? This view can fuel more negative opinions as it paints the US as a place that needs to fix its own issues before trying to lead the world. Personal encounters and tourist behavior. Beyond big ideas like policy and culture, personal experiences shape how people see the US. If travelers from America appear rude or ignore local customs, they can reinforce the stereotype that Americans are loud, arrogant, or ethnocentric. Stories about tourists making insensitive remarks or refusing to learn basic local phrases can spread quickly in a community. These personal experiences might seem small, but they add up to create a certain impression of Americans. At the same time, there are many Americans who make a positive impact abroad: volunteers, teachers, business people, or travelers who respect local ways and build friendships. However, negative stories often stand out more, especially in a news cycle that loves controversy or conflict. This combination of good and bad interactions can lead to mixed feelings, but the bad moments may linger longer in people's minds. Mixed feelings, love and hate at the same time. It's also important to remember that not everyone hates the US. Some countries view America with admiration. People may still dream of going to American universities or chasing the American dream of success. American companies bring jobs, and American products can be popular in many places. For instance, fans across the planet watch the NBA or flock to Hollywood's blockbusters. Technology from Silicon Valley connects billions of people through platforms like Facebook and smartphones. This mix of attraction and anger creates a complicated relationship. A person might love American music but resent American foreign policy. Another might admire American technology but hate how that technology can disrupt local businesses. These ideas can exist in the same person. It's rarely black or white. Facing the question, can things change? Now we return to our main question. Why does the world hate the USA? We've seen that the answer isn't simple. Negative views come from many sources: military interventions, a massive cultural presence, economic dominance, and perceived contradictions between American values and actions. History shows us that when a single nation becomes this powerful, it can spark strong reactions, both positive and negative. But can anything be done to reduce these negative feelings? Some argue that if the US works more closely with international organizations, respects other nations' sovereignty, and avoids unnecessary wars, global attitudes might improve. Others believe that changing the way Americans interact while traveling, learning local customs, speaking basic phrases, showing respect, could help break stereotypes. Critics also point to making trade policies fairer so that local businesses can compete with giant American companies. Yet, it's also true that some of these negative feelings come from deeper historical wounds that might not be healed easily. Whether it's the memory of a bomb dropped decades ago or the feeling that American pop culture is crushing local traditions, these attitudes can pass from one generation to the next. Overcoming them might require a long process of mutual respect, dialogue, and understanding. So there you have it, a look at some of the big reasons why parts of the world hold negative opinions about the United States. Of course, this is not the whole story. Many people admire America for its innovation, entertainment, and ideals like freedom of speech. Others see it as a place where they can start a new life. The feelings are complicated, shifting from country to country, and even from person to person within those countries. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Have you ever experienced anti-American views in your own life, or do you think these opinions are sometimes exaggerated? Maybe you're from a country that has been on the receiving end of American policies. What are your experiences and thoughts? Or perhaps you love certain American movies or brands, but dislike US foreign interventions. Let's talk about it in the comments. If you found this video interesting, or if it made you think about international relations in a new way, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for more discussions on global topics. Remember, your viewpoint matters. Whether you're an American wanting to understand the world's opinions, or someone from another country looking to share your experiences, your voice can help us all learn more. Final interesting fact. Despite all the complaints about Americanization, American fast food chains still open around 2 new locations every hour worldwide. That's a reminder of just how powerful and influential the US remains and why so many people continue to debate its role in the world. Thank you for watching and for sharing your thoughts. See you in the comments.